So we're here to talk about data standards. At the moment, a lot of building control information still moves around as PDFs, emails, or vendor-specific forms. So why is a data standard for building control important? There are many reasons, including first, at the moment, there's a lot of manual work involved where people have to type in data from emails or PDFs. Not only is this a lot of unnecessary labour and cost, but it's also, of course, got the potential to introduce errors. Secondly, because data that's needed for reporting is produced in different formats by different local authorities, only the minimum is collected and submitted. Modern data analysis methods mean that we'd be able to get much more information from this data and maybe even start basing policy decisions on it if this could be aggregated and analysed in a more meaningful way. Thirdly, the current situation means that it's very difficult to switch between systems and drive innovation. Once you've got a system where consistent data means that systems become interoperable, it opens up new opportunities for third-party app developers, for example, or different people and organisations to develop new and better ways of doing things. So what have we done so far about data standards? You're looking at a repository on GitHub, which is an exploratory attempt to think about what interoperable, machine-readable building control data standards might look like. It's been deliberately based on the parallel work that MHCLG have done for a data standard for planning. It's not intended to be a statutory specification, and it's not tied to any particular software vendor or delivery program. Instead, the goal is to explore whether we can model the core concepts of building control in a more structured, reusable, API-friendly way, while still reflecting the legal and procedural realities of the system. So as you can see here, the repository is organised into a series of modular sections. Each section focuses on a different part of the building control life cycle. The first thing that you'll notice is that the sections follow a very similar structure. So let's look at a full plan submission as an example. So each document typically includes a short explanation of the purpose of the data structure, a breakdown into logical modules, validation rules, and we've also included whether fields should be optional or mandatory. And finally, we've included some example JSON payloads. So the reason for this is to separate the legal and operational meaning, for example defined here, from the implementation details. So rather than simply producing example JSON schemas, the repo tries to explain why the information exists and how it relates to broader processes. Now, one of the key ideas running through this repository is the concept of canonical shared structures. For example, across almost every file type, we repeatedly need to represent things like site location, addresses, UPRNs, applicants, duty holders, documents, regulatory routes and declarations. So rather than redefining these differently every time, the repo explores how these could be standardized into reusable components. A good example of this is the work around notices. Traditionally, building notices and initial notices are treated as completely separate things, but structurally, they actually share a huge amount in common. Both identify a site, proposed work, parties, duty holders, and a building control route. So in the repository, those legal concepts remain separate discussion documents, but they both reference a shared canonical notice schema underneath. So we've begun to propose a shared notice schema that could be used for both building and initial notices. The same approach you can see is used for certificates. A completion certificate and a final certificate are legally different documents, of course, issued by different actors, but structurally they both represent things like completion of regulated work, compliance assessment, evidential certification and statutory declarations. So again, the repo separates the legal discussion from the canonical implementation scheme, and we've been able to come up with a proposal for this shared canonical schema that one could use both for final certificates and certificates of completion. This approach is important because it potentially allows interoperability without forcing every legal process into completely different technical models. In other words, it means that private sector and public sector become a lot more interoperable than they are at the moment. Another major theme in the repository is the increasing importance of structured duty holder and compliance information following the Building Safety Act reforms. You'll see recurring concepts around principal designers, principal contractors, declarations, high-risk buildings, fire safety information, and compliance evidence. This repo explores how these might be represented consistently across the life cycle rather than duplicated over and over again in disconnected systems. And this, of course, is also a deliberate attempt to model the system in a way that could support APIs and future integration. So overall, this repo is exploring what a more interoperable future could look like, where structured data can move more consistently between local authorities, RBCAs, applicants, government platforms, and back office systems. The structures here are not final answers, but what we're trying to do is provide something concrete enough that people can start commenting on it, reacting to it, critiquing it, and even building on it. So we want you to get involved. Reach out to our team. You'll find details in the printed part of this presentation, or else from the person who is showing you the video. We would love you to get involved. We understand that not everybody is familiar with GitHub, but we've provided a Google form. You can email us, you can talk to us on Slack, you can phone us. So please, we'd love your feedback and comments. Thank you.